So this is something like our 11th class on the 9th parak of Masechet Sanhedrin, and we're still focusing on part of that Mishnah on Pei Aleph Amud Bet, and the part of the Mishnah we're focused on is Kanaim Pogimbo in the case of Habuel Aramit. And we saw in the Gemara on this case, now in the top of Pei Bet Amud Aleph, the next page, we saw that there's a mention of this case of Habuel Aramit using different words in the book of Malachi. And the way the Midrash that's brought in the Gemara understands or translates the verse in Malachi into rabbinic language is Kol haba ala nochrit keilu mitchaten b'avodah zarah. Any Jewish male who has sexual relations with a non-Jewish woman, it's as if he marries avodah zarah. So we're saying it's a very serious thing. But on the other hand, it's a serious thing spiritually or sociologically or agadically, but halachically, we don't find any prohibition in the Torah against this sexual act. And that was emphasized by the passage, another passage on Pei Bet Amud Aleph, which we saw that the Beit Din of Hashmonai, the Hasmonean Beit Din, instituted that any Jewish male that does this act, it's as if he transgressed 5 different sins. Mishum Nida, Mishum Goya, Mishum Eshet Ish. Wait a second, that's not 5 though. Nida, Goya, Eshet Ish. So it's not 5, it's only 4. Nida, Goya, Eshet Ish. And we saw another opinion that it's not Nida, Shipcha, Goya, and Eshet Ish. I'm sorry, those are the 4. But it's rather Shipcha, Goya, Zona. Nida, Shipcha, Goya, Zona, but not Eshet Ish. In any case, the point is that there's no Isur D'Oraita. Rabbanan thought it's a very, very serious thing, and they made it a serious Isur D'Rabbanan. But we're just left understanding that the Torah doesn't forbid it. And despite that fact, or perhaps because of that fact, the rabbi said Kanaim Pogimbo. In other words, it's the Torah law does not say that one has to get the death penalty, but there's something so bad here spiritually or on the level of values or ethically that Hachamim said Kanaim Pogimbo. And then we continued again on Pei Bet Amud Aleph, Pei Bet Amud Aleph, and we saw it's on the top of Rav Steinsaltz's page 361, which is in the middle of Pei Bet Amud Aleph. We saw that Rav Chisda said that if one comes to ask a rabbinic authority about this matter of Kanaim Pogimbo in the case of Habuel Aramit, ein morin lo. We don't teach him to do the act of Kanaut. What exactly we do tell him, we talked about that, it's not clear. Then we saw that Rabbi Yochanan says the same thing. It's important to remember that it's Rabbi Yochanan. And he said, someone comes to ask, we don't tell him that the law is Kanaim Pogimbo. But more than that, Rabbi Yochanan said 2 additional things, which is that if the Kanai is going to do what the Mishnah says he can do or should do, then it's only while the 2, the male and the female, are involved in the sexual act itself. And a second later, no. And if the Kanai does it a second later, after Piresh, after they separated, then actually the Kanai did an act of murder, and he will be subject to the death penalty by a Jewish court. And not only that, even if the Kanai did the act of Kanaut while the 2 were in the act of sexual intercourse, still at that moment, the figures, the people that the Kanai is about to kill, if one of them kills the Kanai, that's totally within his right. And it means, just 1 second, Nick, it means not only can the man or the woman involved in a sexual act turn around and kill the Kanai to prevent their deaths, because the Kanai is urodef vis-a-vis them, but that means any other Jew would be allowed to save the Habuel Aramit by killing the Kanai. Nikki.
Yeah, I just wanted to go back to that, those two sentences for a minute, which is the She'im Peresh Zimri v'harago Pinchas neharag alav, and then Nepach Zimri v'harago harago lePinchas ein neharag alav. Okay. And what I wanted to say about it is I'm not sure that we understand this the same way, which sounds immodest, and I don't mean it to. But because it seems to me that this nepach, the second part about if Zimri would have turned and killed Pinchas, right? Is still in the same situation where he has separated She'im Peresh Zimri.
I think not.
Right. Okay. Why?
Well, let's see what Barbara says.
Yeah, what I would say, I mean, you raised this before, and honestly, I was thinking along the same lines last week. The only thing I can think of is to take that word and not mean it physically, so not turn physically,
Right,
but
like on the contrary.
turn on him. So
Yes.
while he's still in the act, he grabs his knife and he kills Pinchas.
Okay. All right. Maybe. But okay, fine. It just seems to me that the turning already is like, okay, he's separated and he turns.
Well, so let me explain why it has to be the way I'm saying.
Yes.
Because the first caveat, im peresh Zimri v'harago lePinchas nerag alav, in that situation of peresh, it's now clear, it's just been said, that Pinchas is a murderer. If I know Pinchas is a murderer, then it's 100% clear, and it doesn't have to be said, then anyone can and should come and save the victim from the murderer. In other words, it's clear that if there's already been a situation of Peresh, it's clear that then Pinchas is a Rotzeach. If he's a potential Rotzeach, that means he's a Rodef. He's a Rodef, then it's clear that anyone can come and should come and save the victim. If it's clear already that Pinchas is a Rodef, then what does the next sentence have to say that he's a Rodef? The answer, why it has to say it, is because it's saying he's a Rodef in an additional situation, not what you know already. Even if it's still in the sexual act, he can, Pinchas is still considered a Rodef.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So after the words of Rabbi Yochanan, we come to a drasha that seems to be a new beginning. That's why in the sheets I gave it as a separate clause. And it begins with a verse. It's a drasha on the verse. And the verse says, V'yomer Moshe shoftei Yisrael v'gomer. Moses said to the judges of Israel, etc., right, brought from Parshat Pinchas, actually the Parsha, right, I mean Parshat Pinchas, not in the sense of the Torah portion, but in the matter of Pinchas, which appears at the end of the previous Torah portion. And what's happening here, we won't read it all now again, is that the act of Zimri is being interpreted not so much as an act of Avodah Zarah, not so much as an act of giving in to sexual impulse, in other words, some moral weakness. It's being interpreted as an act of political rebellion against Moshe. And I suggested in our class that if we're going under the assumption that the Gemara combines halachic discussions here with agadic discussions, it's because, and this is my perception, this is my assumption, it's because the Gemara wants to make halachic statements using Agadah. If that's true, it would mean being taught by this drasha that a Kanai is only allowed to do what the Mishnah says, to attack and kill a Jewish man who's in the act of Boel Aramit only if that act of Boel Aramit is an act of political rebellion. But if it's just an act of Avodah Zarah or just an act of giving into sexual temptation, then no. Then the Mishnah wouldn't apply. I'm suggesting again, the Mishnah only applies according to this drasha when the sexual act is in the context of a political rebellion against the leadership of the Jewish people. Okay. Then we saw another section. This was about 10 lines, the previous section. And the next section begins with the words, Uktiv V'yar Pinchas ben Elazar Mara'a. And it's written, and Pinchas ben Elazar saw, and the Darshan asks, Mara, what did he see? And that seems to be a new section. That's why in the sheet I divided into a separate clause. What did he see? And there were three interpretations there of what he saw. Last time we saw the first of the three, Rav. We didn't get the other two. So today in Chavruta, you could begin with the next opinion, the one after Rav, which is Shmuel. I'll just remind everyone what Rav said, so you can compare him to Shmuel and to the opinion that comes afterwards, which is Rabbi Yitzchak Amar Rabbi Eliezer. Rav said that Pinchas remembered a halacha l'Moshe Sinai that Moses had taught when he came down from Sinai, which is Haborel Aramit Karnaim Pogimbo. And he said to Moshe, didn't you teach us that? And Moshe said, yes, I did. And he who reads the epistle should do what it says. And the interpretation I gave to that, I think it was Barbara that disagreed with me, and that's totally fine, was that the opinion of Rav is completely at odds with the opinion of Rabbi Yochanan that we learned earlier. Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Chistu said, Ein Morin Lo. I suggested that Rav is saying that you can only serve as a kanai and kill the Borel Aramit if you take counsel with a rabbinic authority who says, yes, that's what the halakha says, it's proper for you to do it. Again, I'm interpreting the words of Rav, which are Agadah. I'm interpreting them as if they have a halachic meaning. I'm assuming that's why they're here. And I'm understanding that whereas Rav Chis and Rabbi Yochanan said, Ein Morin Lo, meaning that the Kanai has to do what he does only out of the immediate, intense and spontaneous sense of indignation against the dishonor to God that's being affected by this act. That's what Rav Chis and Rabbi Yochanan says, whereas Rav says no. Rav seems to say that you only do the act of Kanim Gimbo if you get explicit ruling on that from halakhic authority, just like Moses gave the authority to Pinchas. But as I said last time, there are rabbinic interpreters that disagree with my reading, even though I don't understand how they can disagree.
I don't see how that's what Rob says. Maybe I'm missing it.
Okay.
It says, what did he see? And he saw the incident, and then he remembered the halakha. And he said to Moshe, did you not teach? And he just says, one who engages in intercourse, zealots strike him.
Right.
Right, Amar. And
Moshe said,
says, let the one who reads this be the agent. How is that he has to come to him first?
Because there could have been a different scenario.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you for asking, that making me think. Rav could have said that Pinchas saw the act, remembered the halakha that he learned from Moses, and
Right.
he would have gotten up and killed Zimri. But it doesn't say that. It says that Pinchas hesitated and asked Moses, didn't you teach us this? And Moses said yes. So that additional stage in which Pinchas hesitates, doesn't immediately get up because he remembered the halakha, doesn't immediately get up and kill, but first he asked Moses, is this what you taught us? And Moses said yes, and only then did Pinchas act. I'm understanding that Rav is telling us that means you need that additional stage. It's not enough to remember the Mishnah or the halakha Moshe Sinai that says Buel Aramit Kanim Pogimbo, but you have to actually take counsel with Moses, which in every generation would mean the halakha authority of that generation. Ask, is that what indeed we were taught?
Okay,
When you're told yes, do you go and act?
that means each time you have to come?
I'm reading it, and to me, I think that's what Rav is saying, that the Kanai cannot act on the spur of the moment on the basis of his strong, passionate religious convictions. He has to rather take counsel with halakhic authority, which puts this matter of Kanaim Pogimbo in a different context. It really is a matter of just obeying halakhic authority, right? We could have thought, especially according to Rav Chisda and Rabbi Yochanan, that the law of Kanaim Pogimbo actually circumvents halakhic authority. And it's just a matter of the spur of the moment passion of the religious emotion. But Rav says, no, that's not enough. You have to go to Moses and ask, is that really the case? Does it apply here? Do I remember correctly? Did I understand properly?
Oh, well, then what qualifies one to be a zealot or a passionate? I mean, at that point, it's sort of.
You're right. Exactly right. It takes the passion out of the equation, which means, according to my interpretation, obviously it's not just my interpretation, what I'm presenting here, is that the Hachamim, our sages, were perturbed, upset, and even apprehensive in light of this whole idea of Kanaim Pogimbo, because they understand the anarchy that could be caused, and they're taking it and they are putting it into a halachic framework.
Okay, so it's a fence
Yes, you could say that.
of some kind.
Yeah.
Okay.
It
Yeah,
sounds
Again,
like
Rav Chisda and Rabbi Yochanan disagree with this, but Rav disagrees with them.
it sounds like they're kind of like legislating it out of existence, as with, Ben Sura Moreh and other things that maybe like even like Ayin Tachat Ayin, like there are so many sort of, there's like a discomfort with it. So they're trying to legislate it so that it would be very rare that it would ever actually happen.
Yes.
well, except that what it does is it changes it from being spur of the moment zealotry to, actual stalking and, and trying to get the guy. I had a better word for it before, but I forgot. But yeah, I mean, that's the thing. It wasn't that he just stumbled across these people having sex somewhere. He followed them to the tent and he knew what was going to happen. So now you could have a whole class of people who say, okay, let me go get my marching orders from the Beit Din. And then I'm going to follow these people around and I'm going to get them.
But then he's
Well,
not,
it seems like a very different thing.
Then he's not a
then he's
zealot.
not a zealot.
Right.
In one of the footnotes, it says, Rabbi Steinsold, he becomes more like an agent of the court. Because,
Right.
so he's a zealot, it's taken out of that, it's a restriction.
He's a zealot in this. He's like the Doberman of the Beis Din.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, right. So let's put everything in context. It's not that the element of passion, of zealotry is being completely taken out of the equation, but it's rather being funneled through the Beit Din halakha authority. Because if you're not a zealot, you're not going to look out for people who are doing these things. And if you're not a zealot, you're not going to run to the Beit Din and ask them, does the halakha apply here? But if you're a zealot and you do see these things and you're aware of these things, then this halakha, at least the way Rav understands it, is tamping down on your zealotry and telling you before you act on your zealotry, you have to take count with the Beit Din, which, like we just heard, it turns this more into an act of not mere zealotry, but zealotry in the framework of halakhic obedience.
But then Shmuel returns back to the idea of zealotry when he says that.
Right. Exactly. And Judy just hinted to us, let's go to Chavruta and learn Shmuel. Okay. So we have about, let's say, 50 minutes for Chavruta, 53 minutes until 15 minutes after the hour. Everyone has the sheets. You have Tanachim, I assume. You need, by the way, a Tanakh, not just Chumash, but Tanakh for a verse in Tehillim. And I'm going to make the breakout rooms. So today we're missing some people. So let's see. The first room is going to be Bela and Paula. Oh, Bela and Paula already
We don't
together.
need a room. We're here.
Okay. So that's your own breakout room.
Okay.
And then the next room is going to be Barbara and Jessica. Barbara and Jessica. And the next room is going to be Judy and Nikki. Nikki Katz. We said Nikki Katz and Gila. Okay, and then we have left is Judy, who's called iPhone.
Yeah,
Nikki
sorry. I
Is that
couldn't
okay?
get,
Right, Nikki Halperin, right? All right, yeah, that's the normal chavruta. Okay,
Right.
very good. So again, we have until 15 minutes after the hour. Any questions or comments? Okay. Okay, so we're back in our class in Masechet Sanhedrin, the 9th parak, Pei Bet Amud Bet, and we are pretty near the end of the daf end of the page. The heading is Uktiv V'yar Pinchas ben Elazar Ma Ra'ah. So that's a verse from the parsha of the Kanut of Pinchas. What did he see? We saw Rav's opinion already, and we get to Shmuel's opinion. Shmuel says something very, very succinct. Ushmuel amar, Ra'ah she'ein chokmah vein tivuna vein eitzah v'neged Hashem. That's a verse from Mishlei, from Proverbs. And what Shmuel says about that verse is, Kol makom shesh chilul Hashem, any place where there's chilul Hashem, ein cholkin kavod l'rav. We do not impart kavod, honor, to the Rav, to the teacher, to the instructor, to the authority, to the rabbi. So as you probably figured out, the way Shmuel's interpreting the verse is that ein chokhmah, ein tvuna, ein eitzah. That means there's no halacha, there's no authority, there's no turning to rabbis or to books. And when is that true? Leneged Hashem, meaning in this interpretation, when you see something that is, in your opinion, neged Hashem. So the first part of the verse, ein chokhmah, ein tivuna, ein eitzah, in Shmuel's language means ein cholkim kavod l'rav. You don't go to the rabbi, you don't ask a question, you don't take counsel, you don't think twice. And the last two words of the verse, leneged Hashem, in Shmuel's language, that means kol makom sheish chilul Hashem, any place where there's chilul Hashem. So as someone, perhaps it was Barbara, said an hour ago, Shmuel's opinion really is the epitome of what we probably consider as zealotry, as kanaut. The stricture that Rav put on it, that you have to know the halacha and perhaps ask a question of your rabbi to make sure you got it right. And only after it's been approved, confirmed, do you act. Shmuel says just the opposite. The opposite, like it's directed against Rav, right? Ein cholkin kavod l'Rav. What you said, I don't agree. And by the way, Rav and Shmuel are contemporaries. And there's many machlokot, many arguments between them in the Gemara. And this seems to be a direct argument. I think it's a direct argument. Ein cholkin kavod l'Rav. In a certain sense, you can say that Shmuel is going back to the simple unadulterated, uninterpreted words of the Mishnah. Boel aramit kaneim pogimbo, just like that. And I want to add, although I may be going on a limb in saying this, Shmuel says kol makom. In any place, he doesn't say just boel aramit. He says kol makom, which could give the impression, the really, like say, wild impression that this halacha of kanim pogimbo doesn't apply just to the cases that the Mishnah gives. Boel aramit and the two other cases. Perhaps Shmuel means, perhaps, I'm not sure, perhaps he means that in any place we see chilul Hashem of this intensity, of this seriousness, then ein cholkim kavod larav, but you just go and you act as you know you must. If that's what Shmuel means, then that's really taken out of all strictures. Yeah. Anyone want to say anything about Shmuel? Okay. So I'll admit that I'm afraid of Shmuel. Right? This is really seemingly very dangerous.
But he's staying true to the notion of what a kanai is, no?
Yeah, you could be right. That if there's such a thing as the simple pshat, that's Matityahu, right? That's Matityahu in Sefer Maccabim that we talked about last time. That's just get up and on the base of your religious sensibilities and your zealotry, on your anger and your fear, whatever it might be, you get up and do what has to be done. Okay, so that's Shmuel. Then we get the next opinion. Remember, there are three opinions in answering the question, Ma Ra'ah, what did Pinchas see? So we get to Rabbi Yitzchak Amar Rabbi Eliezer. Ra'ah Shabbat Malach Bishchit Ba'am. He saw that the angel came, Bishchit Ba'am. And that's clear in the verses, right? The verses say in the Parsha of the Kanot, that a Magifah plague started and ended up killing 24,000 Jews, and actually only ended in the words of God because of the act of Pinchas. So he saw the plague and he reacted to the plague. Now, I want to point out that according to Rabbi Yitzchak Amar Rabbi Eliezer, we've totally changed the meaning of this act of Kanot. Because now it says what Pinchas saw, what he reacted to, is not the sexual act itself. It's rather the destruction of the Jewish people. Which means that Pinchas is no longer a kanai, a zealot, in the sense of someone who reacts to terrible sin, who reacts with a visceral disgust of a terrible chilul Hashem, of a terribly desecration, and attacks the sinner. No, he's not attacking the sinner. He's not even thinking of Zimri. What he's thinking about is his poor brothers and sisters who are being killed by God's plague. These innocent Jews are being killed because of the terrible act of one Jew. So you could even say that Pinchas doesn't want to hurt Zimri. But he just has no choice. He does this act of zealotry in order to defend. He's not an attacker, he's a defender. He's defending the Jewish people. And
yeah, he's doing it for the public health.
Yeah, and just one more sentence, which is that it's a totally different understanding of Kanaut. It's actually, I would say, emptying the concept of Kanaut from the pshat that we would attribute to it. And it's simply now that this is a person, Pinchas, who deeply cares about the Jewish people and about human life, and he's just saving life, which would mean that halachically, if this opinion has halachic significance, and I'm claiming again that all these agadot have halachic significance, that would mean, according to Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Yitzchak Amar Rabbi Eliezer, you could never do this matter of Bu'el Aramit Kanim Pogimbo unless you see that act, that sexual act, is causing the death of thousands upon thousands of Jews. and then you act to save human life. And one of the questions on the sheet was, how is this opinion of Rabbi Yitzchak Amar Rabbi Eliezer perhaps similar to the opinion we saw earlier, the first drasha near the top of, earlier, that began with the words, V'yoma Moshe el Shoftei Yisrael, the drasha that gave political significance to the act of Zimri. So what we said there on that earlier drasha was perhaps the intent of the drasha is to say that you're only allowed to do the act of Kanaut in a case in which the Boel Aramit is part of a political rebellion against the Jewish people. In the same sense, I'm claiming that this opinion of Rabbi Yitzchak Amar Rabbi Eliezer is also very, very, very limiting the case in which you can act as a kanai. He's saying you can only act as a kanai when you see a Boel Aramit, when you see that it's causing the death and destruction of thousands of Jews. So it's very different than the anonymous drasha above, but it's also very similar. It's similar in the sense that it's limiting the permission to act as a kanai to a case in which the sexual act, Boel Aramit, has larger communal significance. That's the similarity between the twins. The difference is the larger communal significance above is political, whereas here it's humanitarian. That you see people are dying because of the act of a Boel Aramit.
But do you think, Rabbi Eliezer doesn't say that this is the only case where you could be a Kanai. He just maybe is simply presenting, it looks to me from the way it's written in the Gemara, Pinchas as the defender of the Jewish people. He's presenting him in a different light. Not so much, is he saying this is the halacha, this is it, this is the only time?
You're right, Judy. I can't prove what I'm saying. So why am I saying what I'm saying? Number one, because in the material we're learning, we see a pretty unique combination of halakha and agadah mixed together. Really one within the other. And I'm assuming, but again, I can't prove this. I'm assuming that that combination means that the rabbis who are editing the Gemara, who are putting together this material, they are combining the halakha and agadah in order to make halakhic statements through the use of agadah. Can't prove it, it's not certain. And another thing I can say is that the vast majority of the Agadah brought here, other than the words of Shmuel, Shmuel's an exception, the vast majority of this Agadic material is pushing in the same direction as the halachic words of Rabbi Yochanan above. Rabbi Yochanan, who said that Ein Morin Lo, and who said after Prisha, you can't do the act of Kanaut, and who said that even when the Kanai is within his right to kill, because they're in the sexual act, he's still a rodef that is allowed to be killed by others. All of that halach material was in the direction of limiting the acts of future Jewish Kanaim, limiting and warning and telling them it's so it's only at a certain moment and it's very dangerous, you could be killed. It's all to discourage. And it looks like most of the most of the Agadic material here, other than Shmuel, is going in the same direction. And to me, that gives reason to think that the rabbis are bringing the Agadah in order to strengthen the halak position of Rabbi Yochanan, again, in discouraging the Kanai. But again, that's not certain. I can't prove it. Yeah, I'm just going to look on the sheet and see if there's anything else I wanted to add. Yeah, so how many approaches have we seen so far? That was the last question 9. We saw Rav Chisda and Rabbi Yochanan, that's 1. And we saw the anonymous drasha that put the act of kanaut into political context. That's 2. And now we saw these 3 opinions, Rav Shmuel and Rabbi Yitzchak Amar Rabbi Eliezer. So altogether we have, I'd say, 5 opinions about the circumstances in which one can act as a kanai. And the one that goes in a completely different direction of the 4 is, of course, Shmuel. Okay, so we can go on to the next section. If we don't, can we go on to the next section? Okay, so next section of the Gemara, the next passage, goes like this, at the bottom of the page. In my printing, the last 3 lines, Rav Steinsaltz. V'yakom mitoch ha'ida, v'kach romach biyado. Referring to Pinchas, in the verse in the Torah we're learning in Bamidbar, Pinchas arose out of the Eidah, and the rabbis understand Eidah to mean the Sanhedrin, the rabbis' meeting. And by the way, very often the word Eidah in the Torah is interpreted by Midrash Halacha to mean a collection of Jews doing a religious act. Sometimes it's the court that's the Eidah, the Sanhedrin. Other times it's a minyan. The whole idea of minyan we get from the use of the word Eidah in the Torah, that it's 10. So anyway, so it says that he arose from out of the Eidah. Notice he was sitting in the Sanhedrin, deliberating, and he went out of the Sanhedrin, and then, and only then, did he take a spear in his hand. And on that, there's a halachic comment. Mikan shenik nasim v'chlei zayin lebeit midrash. From here, we learn that you don't go into the Beit Midrash with a weapon, please Zion. Because he picked up the spear only after he went out of the Sanhedrin, which means that when he went in, he left it outside. And by the way, this is a halacha today, that you're not allowed to go into a Beit Midrash with a weapon, whether it's a knife, a spear, a gun. Today, I mean, where I live, everyone goes to the Beit Midrash, into the synagogue with a weapon. And there are those who say that you have to cover it up, and some people cover it with a jacket, put on the floor, or if it's a pistol, it's covered with their shirt. And others say, in the case of a gun, as long as the machsanit, the cartridge, is not in the weapon, so it's not a weapon, so that it's mutar. And others say that you're allowed to do it simply because there's a security need. I'll just express my totally unrelated opinion that the overwhelming presence of weapons in the synagogue and in the Beit Midrash where I live does something to the Jewish soul. I'm not talking halachically, I'm just saying that I think it's dangerous to the Jewish soul to be so used to having weapons and having them so close to tefillah and to limud and to sifrei kodesh. That's my my commentary now. Close parentheses.
I thought maybe it was the reason you don't bring it in is because that's when you get into hot arguments with your chavruta, and so you're protecting each
It's
other
not
from.
like that between Nikki and I, just saying.
No, people are trained. They're trained in the army. It's not, yeah.
But I will say that what Nikki Katz just said reminds me of the Gemara in Masechet Megillah, I think we once mentioned, that Rabbi Zera and, can't remember, Rabbi Zera, another rabbi had Purim together, and one of them got drunk and killed the other. And then, so next, and he was revived. He prayed, the perpetrator prayed, and his chavruta was revived. You know, then it says that next year, the perpetrator invited his chavruta for Purim again, and the victim said, I'm not relying on miracles, you know, you invite someone else this year. Yeah, okay. So we have that halakhic statement, and then we go on to the Agadah, that's the core of our matter. Shalach Shanana Hinicha Ba'umkalo he took off the handle of the spear and he put it under his beged, under his clothing. So I said it wrong, I'm sorry. The metal part, the blade, is hidden under his clothing, and the wooden part, the handle, is exposed. Vayanishan volech al maklo, and he was leaning and walking on his cane. In other words, the handle of the spear he was using as a cane, and it looked like a cane. And since, or when he arrived to the Shevet of Shimon, he said, where did we find that the Shevet of Levi, in other words, my tribe, says Pinchas, is greater than the tribe of Shimon? And he means to say, my tribe is not greater than your tribe. Me, Levi, I'm not greater than you. You're Shimon, you're the second born. Me, Levi, I'm the third born. So you're better than me. And the inference is that I don't have to be more righteous than you. If you're doing these things, Zimrei and the Midianite woman, then I can do them also. And they got the hint. Amru, those who are guarding the entrance to the tent in which Zimri is doing what he's doing, they said to themselves, the guards, hinichulo, let him in, let him go. Afula sotzrachav niknas. Even him, even Pinchas lasotzrachav, to do his deeds, to do his needs, which in this case means the sexual act, niknas, he's coming. So what's happening here is an act of deception, right? Pinchas is making it look as if he's coming to the tent of Zimri in order to participate in actually the gang rape of this woman, of this princess. And he's successful and he's led into the tent. And then he does what he does. He kills both of them. And what the guards say, after they say, let him in, he's come to do his needs, Hitir Prushim et Davar. The Prushim, meaning the Pharisees, meaning the rabbis, have allowed this matter. The impression they get is that Pinchas is saying, it's okay. I'm going to do it so everyone could do it.
Can
So
I
they-
ask about what you just said?
Yeah.
Apologies, my camera's off. I think we understood it. We didn't understand it to be characterized as a gang rape. I think our assumption is that it was consensual. And I'm just curious, like consensual with the Midianite women. And I'm curious if there's something in the language that leads you to that interpretation, or is it the, Shimon and Levi, like the sort of allusion to Dinah, or what is it in the story that leads you to that?
I would say that you correctly are pointing out that there's no basis to say what I said. I was giving expression, I guess, just to my disgust. In the Torah, you're right, it seems to be consensual.
Well, except that he grabbed her by the hair. I mean,
But
Jessica and I both were thinking along of the lines of an orgy, but when you said a gang rape, that could be too. I mean, we don't know how many women were in there, basically.
Yeah. Yeah, but don't base anything on what I said. It was
But if you read this in context with Bilam, right? I mean, we're right. I mean, this is connected to it. It's when Bilam tells the the king, basically send the women after the men. You're not going to get them otherwise. Send the women and let them seduce them. So this is not just one, this is the one incident that they talk about, but this is happening all over the place.
yeah, I think you're right. That's what the verses say, right? Let me just
Yeah. I mean, it says,
Yeah.
that they were committing at the beginning of Kaf Aleph. Vayeshev Yisrael b'shetim v'charel ha'am lizanot el benot Moav. It's not just this is the one incident to stop the plague, or that happens, and then the plague is stopped. But this is happening all over the place.
Yeah, that's what it seems to be. And it does seem that
I wouldn't call it a gang rape. I would say that
the
it
women
was,
saw this in the context of a religious act of idolatry.
yeah.
Okay, I stand corrected. I'm just gonna look on the sheet and see if there's anything we want to add here. Yeah. So a few things. One is that Pinchas is being portrayed here as following the footsteps of his forefather Levi in the incident of Dinah, Shechem, and Hamor. Because in that case, Levi, together with Shimon, were reacting to a very, very problematic and deeply offensive sexual act. And they, Levi, together with Shimon, was coming to respond to that with an act of zealousness that was perpetrated through cunning and deception. And the same thing here.
Where that quote is from, because I don't see where it's quoted from. Is that a
What is-
midrash? It's not in the text.
Wait a second. What are you talking about,
Yeah.
Bailey?
The fact that he used deception to enter
Oh, that's
into.
midrash. That's midrash. It's
That's
not.
midrash. Okay. It's not in the text.
But I'm saying that the midrash is probably inspired by what Levi did with Shechem and
Right.
Hamor. Right. So the midrash is not coming from nowhere. It's saying this in context. Okay, that's one point I want to make. The second point I wanted to make is that what question is this midrash coming to answer? Why is it here? How is it helping us? How is it helping to understand the halacha or just the Torah, what the Torah describes? Anyone have any ideas about that? What question is this midrashic passage that we just read coming to answer? Barbara.
Well,
Go ahead, Nikki.
now, just that this is not an act of zealotry. This is an act of deception, of thinking it out. He planned. It's not in the moment. So if this is okay, this is a whole different story.
You know, Nikki, I agree with you that this is about planning and it's about cunning and it's about thinking, but I think it doesn't contradict that's acts of zealotry. He's using, Pinchas is using his mind in order to fulfill the dictates of his heart, right?
Yeah, but then it's no longer passion.
I understand what you're saying. It's not immediate passion.
Why does it have to be?
Right. I thought that's what the requirement was.
Okay, I hear what you're saying. Okay, but I was thinking of something else. I agree. I had something else in mind. Barbara?
So I was thinking more of, I guess, informed partly by the stuff we read later, right after this, which is that by using this deception, that answers the question of how he was able to get away with that without raising an alarm.
Yeah.
Especially whether it was an orgy or a gang rape, if there were other people coming into the tent, you know, Zimri wouldn't think anything wrong. I mean, except for what he was doing.
Yeah, that's
So it sort of explains how how Pinchas could get away with it.
Yeah. And it's also very similar to Shechem and Hamor and Shimon and Levi. How did they get away with it? They couldn't have managed this small band of Israelites. How did they manage to kill all the people of the city of Shechem? Only through deception, which And again, like Barbara says, this is in accord with what we learn later, that you need a lot of miracles, or you need a lot of deception, a lot of cunning to get away with it. It's not a simple thing. Right.
But
Nikki Halperin.
maybe as a sort of not even quite footnote, that also it sort of underlines this whole issue of being separate or being the same as, and the separation of the zealot or pious, or I don't mean pious, the zealot or the jealous one or the passionate one, whatever. Because it's, oh, he's just like us. Oh no, he's completely not like us. Okay. That the deception also, if he's acting for the collective good, in order to do that, is he he remains in a separate category, but others have to perceive him. There's a question of distinction between belonging and not belonging, and on what level that happens.
So are you saying that the zealot has to be very, very cunning and better than everyone else in that sense? That's not what you're saying.
No, although it's, again, you're right. It's interesting to me that he, in two different agadot or two different drashot, his argument is, I am better than you and I'm not better than you.
Yeah. Actually, thank you for pointing that out. I wanted indeed to point that out, that this drasha that we're reading right now goes back to that same theme of the order of birth of the tribes.
Mhm.
And that gives me the impression, perhaps, that this drasha is a continuation of that drasha. Let me be more specific. This drasha that is on the words, "V'yakum mitoch eda," perhaps is a continuation of the earlier anonymous drasha that began with the words, "V'yuma Moshe el shoftei Yisrael." In that drasha, that theme came up of the second and third born of Shimon and Levi, and here it comes again. So perhaps we can see this is a continuation of that, even though the Gemara doesn't bring them contiguously, right? The Gemara has a break in the middle, the matter of the Mara'ah, and then the three opinions is a break, but it seems
So
like
then
these shorts are connected.
So then it's also seen more as a political rebellion. And what he's stopping is the political, that's, if it's tied back to that first
Okay.
midrash, it's still part of the continuation of this political rebellion of the tribe of Shimon against Moshe.
Okay, that could very well be. Granted.
It also shows, the extreme cunningness of Pinchas. If it was reported, I mean, we don't know if he knew what Zimri said to Cosby, but the pride of his birth order is really important to him. That was the whole way that he got her to come with him.
Yeah, that's true.
So he picked up on that somehow.
Very good. Okay, good. Right. That means Pinchas is cunning in his understanding of human psychology. Very good. Yeah, nice. Although just one other thing, which is there a connection between the halacha of not going into the Beit Midrash with a weapon and this whole drasha that we're learning now? Right, they're brought together. Is there a connection? And I was thinking perhaps there is a connection if this drasha that we just read is part of the previous drasha, as Bela pointed out, that was limiting the context of Kanot to a political rebellion, then that means the darshan is involved in the act of trying to limit acts of Kanaut. And I would say that is connected to the halakha of not going to the Beit Midrash with a weapon, in the general sense that it's trying to put the damper on violence. Keeping weapons out of the Beit Midrash, to me, seems connected to the idea of limiting Kanaut. Right, the Beit Midrash is not about, and Judaism, learning is not about killing people, it's about learning. So we're keeping weapons out of the Beit Midrash, and we're trying to distance ourselves as far as possible from the Beit Midrash, leading to and causing us to develop feelings of Kanot that are going to cause us to kill people. Perhaps it's a stretch what I'm saying. It's my effort to understand the connection to halakha and the Agadah here. Okay, we have time for the next section, excuse me. Here we go. Amar Rabbi Yochanan. And of course, this Rabbi Yochanan is the same Rabbi Yochanan we saw above, who limited the Kanaut to only at the moment of, that he said, number one, Ein Morin came. Number one, he said only during the sexual act. And number two, even if it's during the sexual act, the Kanai has to know that he's a Rodef and he could be legitimately killed by the victim or someone who's coming to defend the victim. Says Rabbi Yochanan, Shisha Nisim Nasulo LePinchas. 6 miracles were done for Pinchas. By the way, other texts have 12 miracles. This one has 6. Shisha Nisim Nasulo LePinchas. Echad Shayalu LeZimri Lifrosh Velo Peresh. The first miracle is that Zimri, had he been smart, he would have stopped the sexual act because he knew the halakha, so he wouldn't be open to being killed by Pinchas. But he didn't do that, and that must be a miracle. Echad, Shayalu LeDeber Velo Diber. He should have spoken. He should have yelled and cried and gotten help from his fellow tribesmen. That he aimed and successfully aimed to the male sexual organ and the female sexual. He got them in the act, and it's now clear to the world that he got them in the act. It's clear to the world that what he did is exactly according to the halakha. That they didn't fall off the spear. In other words, he got them like on a shipud. How do you say shipud in English?
Skewer.
A skewer, right? He's holding them up on the skewer so the whole world can see that he got them in the act, and it's totally legal what he did. That came I said mavet, I read it wrong, it just says malach, came the angel and lifted up the mashkof, lifted up the, how do you say, the threshold?
Lintel.
But it was the top of the door frame, right? So that he can walk out with the spear held up high so they wouldn't fall off the skewer, because if he had to lower the skewer, the romach, the spear, to get out, then they would have fallen off and the world wouldn't see what he did. And number 6, that came the angel of Vishchit Ba'am, caused the destruction. And that, of course, we see in the Torah that it says that the angel came and there was a plague and 24,000 Israelites were killed. So if we try to really briefly analyze this, the first 2 miracles that Zimri should have separated and that he should have called out. So these 2 miracles show that without a miracle, you who want to be a zealot may end up committing an act of murder, or you may end up being killed yourself. It's warning that if you don't have miracles on your side, it's going to be very, very dangerous to be a zealot. So I think this is in the same vein of trying to cool down zealotry among the Jewish people. And then miracles 3, 4, and 5 are about proving to the world exactly what happened, that I got them in the act. And everyone can see it. And by the way, that in the end is also, it's not just a matter of proving that Pinchas was right, and he did the right thing, but it's also saving Pinchas' life, because if he can't prove that he got them in the act, then he could be accused in court of killing them perhaps after Peresh, which means that he's a murderer. So you need a lot of miracles to stay alive if you're a zealot. And again, all this comes, I think, to cool down zealotry. But the last one, Shaba Malach Vishchit Ba'am, it's something we saw earlier, right? In the opinion of Rabbi Eliezer. It connects to Rabbi Eliezer. Here the thing is, as Rashi says, that since everyone was involved in saving their lives and they were afraid of the plague, so they didn't react to Pinchas. But had the plague not been there, Pinchas would have been killed by the tribe of Shimon, who are so angry that he killed their chieftain. So again, it's a matter of you need a miracle to save your life if you're a zealot. Okay, let's take the last 5 minutes to go on further. Ba v'chavatan lifnei makom. This new drasha is anonymous. That may mean it's still Rabbi Yochanan speaking. Pinchas came and beat them on the ground in front of Hamakom, in front of God. He took the spear with the 2 people on it and he threw it in front of God like in anger. Amar lefanav, he said in front of him, Pinchas said to God, Ribono shel olam, al elu yiplu 24,000 Yisrael. God, Master of the universe, because of these will die 24,000 Jews. So on the one hand, Pinchas is minimizing the crime, because the truth is that it wasn't just Zimri, right? We read in the Torah, there's lots of other Jews fornicating with the foreign women. But Pinchas presents it as if God killed 24,000 Jews just because of this one sexual act. He's minimizing the crime, and he's doing that because he wants to say to God, why do you kill people? You should have had mercy. It's not fair. And he brings a verse, and the verse says, Shenemar v'yu hamitim b'magifa arba v'srim elef. The verse says, and those who died in the plague were 24,000. And then the Midrash goes on to say, Hainu dichtiv yamod Pinchas v'yifalel. Pinchas got up and yifalel. So this is a set of verses in Tilim that perhaps you saw in the Chavruta, perhaps you didn't, that is clearly about Pinchas and what he did. It's clearly about that. And it says, Pinchas got up v'yifalel. What does yifalel mean? Amar Rabbi Elazar, v'yitpalel lo ne'amar ela v'yifalel. It doesn't say v'yitpalel, it just says v'yifalel, which must have a different meaning. Melamed kivyachol shasaf flilut im kono. It means, as it were, kivyachol, that he made judgment with God, meaning against God. We're interpreting the word to mean Pinchas got up v'yipalel, and he accused God. So now what we have is Pinchas doing just what Moshe Rabbeinu did many times in the Torah, coming to God and saying, what are you doing this to the people for? Why are you killing them? Give them another chance. It's not fair. We find that after the Cheta Egel, we find it after Cheta Meraglim. So Pinchas becomes a defender of the Jewish people. He becomes a man asking for mercy. And then the Midrash continues and says, Bikshu malachei hasharet letachafo. The ministering angels try to push him aside because he's offending the honor of God. And he's speaking against God. He's bringing God in judgments. He's accusing God. So they want to defend God's honor. Amar lehen, God said to the angels, Hinichulo, let him be, let him speak. Kanai ben Kanaihu, Meshiv Chema ben Meshiv Chemahu. He's the Kanai, the son of a Kanai. Right? He's acting like Levi, who is a Kanai, as we know in the Torah, but he's also Meshiv Chema ben Meshiv Chema. He is soothing my wrath, the son of someone who has assuaged my wrath. And here the references to Aaron, who after the incident of Korach brought the incense pan and tried to save the Jewish people from the plague. So I know we have no time left. Let me just sum up the amazing thing that happened here. In the Torah, it says that Pinchas did what it said, did what he did. He acted b'kanaut, the word kanai is there. But the Torah also says that what Pinchas did, says God, is he assuaged my wrath. It says that, and he brought an end to the plague. Now in the Torah, it might appear that the assuaging of the wrath and the bringing an end to the plague is a result of what Pinchas did. It's not a motivation, it's a result. His motivation seems to be kanaut. But according to this midrash we just read, the result is interpreted as the motivation lechatchila. What he is, his character, his intention, his motivation is Meshiv Chema ben Meshiv Chema. And this ties into things we said earlier about the changing of the characterization of Pinchas from Kanai, who comes to attack the sinner, to the defender of the Jewish people, who comes to save them. And that's really important. It may not mean anything halachically, but it's coming to tell us that what the rabbis, what our tradition wants to hold up as a model of Jewish behavior is not necessarily the Pinchas who attacked the sin and the sinner, but rather the model of Pinchas who was concerned with, he had empathy for the Jewish people, and he sees them suffering and he acts, such that we want to encourage people not who are coming to attack sinners, but rather are coming to save and to have mercy, even going so far as to come to God and say, God, why are you killing the Jewish people? And that same tradition of Moshe trying to defend the sinners. We call it Shani Gorut, right? Defense of the Jewish people. It's an old tradition. So Pinchas's character is being molded here in this new direction, and that's very significant. So next week we'll continue, and the week after next week is our semester break. Questions, comments? Okay,
The semester break is only 1 week?
I'm pretty sure it's only 1 week.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks everyone for being with us. See you next
Thank
week.
you.